Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk, 888-589-8840, number to call. Now, the polls tend to look kind of discouraging for Governor Romney, but there is a little-known dynamic that's at work here, and that is the plunging number of voter registrations. And this article I'm looking at is focused on Ohio, which everybody says, look, Romney's got to win this thing, and I probably agree with them. I think he does need to win Ohio. I think he does need to win Virginia. He does need to win Florida. But voter registration in Ohio is down 490,000 people from 4 years ago. 44% of that is in Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, where Democrats outnumber Republicans 2-1. So the idea is, the implication here pretty clearly is voter registration is way, way down among Democrats, which might be an indication of a lack of enthusiasm, a lack of fervor, or they got their Obama iPhone, so they don't care about the election. Obama gave them a phone, so they could care less about what happens on November 6th because they got theirs. Now, by the way, Obama is actually out there breaking the law. Not that this will be a surprise to any of you, but President Obama is breaking the law again in an effort to buy this election. Now, what's happened because of this sequester, I don't have time to go into the details, but as you're aware, unless Congress can come to agreement on something, there are these automatic spending cuts that go into effect on January 1, $1.2 billion total. Half of that are cuts to the military, which means starting January 1, military contractors, that is private contractors who do work for the military, they got to lay people off on January 1. They got to fire people January 1. They got to lay them off. They're not going to have the money because of the sequestration deal. That is Barack Obama's idea. Now, the Republicans agreed to it, so I got no brief for the Republicans on this. They're just as guilty as Barack Obama, but he's the one that pushed for this. Republicans didn't have to go along with it, but they did. So this is going to gut private contractors. Now, a lot of these guys are in swing states. Now, here's the deal. Here's where it gets dicey is the law. It's called the WARN Act, W-A-R-N. You got to warn people if you're going to lay them off. In other words, if you know that you're going to have to lay people off by a certain date, you have to give them at least 60 days notice or you have some serious financial liability. You got to give them 60 days of advance notice that layoffs are coming. Now, notice what that means. If you back off from January 1, it might be like January 2, maybe the official date. But if you back off, and we're talking hundreds of thousands of jobs here. We're talking hundreds of thousands of jobs in states all over the United States. Now, you back off from January 2, 2013. Where does that drop you? That drops you on November 2nd, 2012. That is 4 days before the election. So the law requires Barack Obama and the Department of Defense to see that their contractors let their people know that a lot of you are going to get fired on January 2. But President Obama does not want these layoffs hitting people inboxes 4 days before an election. So he's out there frantically trying to talk these contractors into breaking the law. Don't send out these notices. We don't want you to send them out. We don't want people to know that they're going to get laid off on January 1. So they're trying to push this off until after the election, and that just frankly breaks the law. And what President Obama is doing, this is where it's just really galling. What President Obama is doing is he's promising these defense contractors, look, we know you're going to be breaking the law. We know that courts are going to fine you, and they're going to assign extra cost to you because you didn't comply with the law. You are going to get financially penalized for not obeying the law. And President Obama is out there telling them, look, don't worry about it because we will cover your cost, by which they mean you and me, taxpayers. So what President Obama is saying to these defense contractors, look, don't tell people you're going to fire them even though you know. Don't obey the law, and you're going to get in trouble. We know you're going to get in trouble with the courts because people are going to sue you for this. You're going to get in trouble. You're going to lose. You're going to get fined. You're going to have extra costs assigned to you by these courts. Don't worry about it. We are just going to soak those taxpayer chumps for every penny it takes to make you whole. You are not going to be out a dime. We're going to make the hardworking American people, we're going to stick it to them because they're not in a position to say anything about it. I mean, I hope that aggravates you just as much as it does me. Now, Eric Holder, here's a story about Eric Holder as a college student participated in an armed takeover of a Columbia University ROTC office. They converted this thing into the Malcolm X Lounge. It used to be a ROTC office. That's Reserve Officer Training Corps. It's a military training corps in Columbia. And Eric Holder was part of an armed takeover of that place when he was a freshman at Columbia in 1970. Armed takeover. Now, it wasn't prosecuted because Columbia was afraid they were going to trigger even more riots. And so it wasn't prosecuted for it, but that's coming out now. And these Fast and Furious guns, got a story here from Fox News that these Fast and Furious guns, Univision is doing some good investigative reporting. They've got a story that's going to air, maybe even tonight. But they have discovered that some of the guns that went across the border in Fast and Furious were used in a massacre of 16 teenagers in 2010. So they found 57 guns. This is by comparing numbers on the weapons that have been recovered in Mexico, always in connection with crime scenes. And Mexican authorities are saying 300 of their citizens have been injured or killed by Fast and Furious guns. But the Spanish language network Univision, and remember, this was the one network that actually asked President Obama some pretty direct questions when they had him on their kind of town hall forum. So Univision compared a list. They got a list of 100,000 weapons that were recovered in Mexico from 2009, 2010. The guns were then compared with the serial numbers of the 2,000 guns that were sold in Fast and Furious. Univision identified a total of 57 more previously unreported firearms that were bought by straw purchasers who were supposed to be monitored by the ATF during Fast and Furious, and that made their way into Mexico and then were recovered in Mexico at crime scenes that were related to murders, kidnappings, and other actions by Mexican hitmen and drug cartels. And one of them was a massacre, January 2010, Juarez, Mexico. Cartel members burst into a home, killing 16 people, most of them teenagers, at a birthday party. And the guns that they used were guns that Barack Obama ordered gun sellers in the United States to illegally sell to straw buyers, claiming they were going to track them. They did not do it. When President Bush ran Operation Wide Receiver, every single one of those guns they sold had a tracking device. Only 2 of the guns that were sold under Fast and Furious had tracking devices. And by the way, the Bush administration shut that thing down after about 2 years. You hear President Obama out there saying, hey, Operation Fast and Furious was actually started by President Bush. Beep. Wide Receiver was the name of the program under Bush. That thing was phased down, closed out, hundreds of arrests, no arrests under Fast and Furious, hundreds of arrests under the Bush administration, but they closed the program down long before Fast and Furious ever started. Let's grab a couple of phone calls. Let's go to Shannon in Exeter, Missouri. Shannon, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian, God bless you, man. And I'll tell you something. I've been on this phone waiting for half an hour to talk to you, man. That's how awesome it is to just get on your program. But thankfully, Obama is paying for my phone.
Well, you know what that means, Shannon. Now, what that means, Shannon, that means I'm paying for your phone. So.
Yeah, I'm just teasing you.
I know you are. Go ahead.
I seriously just wanted to kind of drop a line. You know, I've been thinking really hard and really praying about this speech that's coming up between Obama and Mitt Romney. And I really hope. I mean, you know that I'm an independent. I'm a family man. I've got kids, you know, and I work day in and day out to support my wife and my kids. But I want to see Mitt Romney get out there, and I want to see him get to the heart of the issues. And I don't care what his handlers say. He needs to take some shots, and he needs to get out there and take the fight to Obama. He needs to tell the American people, the independents like me, who are going to make the decision, right? Mm-hmm. He needs to tell us and show us I live in Missouri. Show me, man. Get out there and take it to this guy.
Well, and Shannon, it's interesting. You identify yourself as an independent. And I've seen the polling data. I've seen one after another indicates that Romney is leading with independents on most of the issues. Independents are on the other side of the ledger from Barack Obama. And I don't know if Mitt Romney just doesn't see these polls. I don't know why he's not making use of this, because issue after issue after issue, the Republican position is where the majority of independents are at.
I know, and that's what concerns me about him. He just does not take as strong a stand as he needs to, And I've already said I'm going to vote for the man, right? But the truth of the matter is he needs to get out there and show us that he's got some hair on his chest and get out there and take the fight to this guy, because he can't just sit back and coast on his laurels. Oh, I was a governor, or I've had more experience than him, or I ran Bain. We don't need somebody doing that. We need somebody to get out there and show us that they're serious. This is not a game. Every one of our lives, the future of our country, it rides on this, okay?
Well, and it's interesting. It's interesting, Shannon, that one of the knocks on Mitt Romney, and I think it's probably an accurate criticism, is he's been a very risk-averse candidate. He hasn't seemed to want to take any chances. He hasn't wanted to seem to take any bold positions. He hasn't wanted to seem to lay out any positions. It's like he's playing prevent offense. And there is no prevent offense. You can have a prevents defense, which is a great way to let the other team march down the field and score a touchdown on you in the last 2 minutes of the game.
Well, the best defense is offense.
Yeah, that's the best defense is a good offense. All right, Shannon, listen, I appreciate it. So Shannon wants Mitt Romney to show some aggressiveness and to show some fire and to lay out some specifics and let the American people know what they're going to get if they vote for Mitt Romney. So that's going to be the challenge that's set out before him. And I think that's going to be difficult for Mitt Romney. He's a very risk-averse guy. He seems to be afraid to kind of take a bold position on just about anything. In the hopes that if he plays it safe, doesn't make any big mistakes, the American people will kind of vote for him by default, and that strikes me. If that's the strategy he's pursuing, I think that's a pretty risky strategy, and we'll see what happens on Wednesday night. Focal Point AFR Talk, back in 2.